Hi, this is Elliott Martin,
And I'm Becky Hatfield.
and we're coming to you from opposite ends of the country today to talk about Medicare
We're asking,
and answering all your questions related to Medicare so that way you can make an informed decision. This is the Medicare Navigators Podcast.
what can we expect this coming year with the Inflation Reduction Act and prescription prices and all of that?
On the debate last night, there's kind of argument between the two candidates about who was the one that got the insulin down. I don't know the answer to that, who was actually doing it, but some of the legislation that is hitting the books next year in January of 2025 is part of this Inflation Reduction Act that Biden passed, which has over the last couple of years been making some adjustments really to the prescription portion of Medicare Part D. That's probably the biggest struggle, is the prescription side of Medicare, where I tend to get the most complaints, where we have the most service issues, is on the prescription drug portion. This year, there's a $3,300 cap on out-of-pocket expenses for prescriptions, for covered prescriptions across the board for all prescription drug plans, either if you have a standalone or a Medicare Advantage plan that includes prescription coverage. Next year, it's going down to $2,000 for the year. And there's some expensive medications out there, which so some people are going to benefit from it. If somebody's got some expensive medications, there's some prescriptions out there. I think I saw this one this week that has a $2,500 a month retail price. Okay, so some people, yes, you're going to benefit from having a cap of $2,000. You just need to make sure you're in a prescription drug plan that does include your prescription on its formulary. Okay, so what we may see, though, next year, of course, when legislation hits the books, the private sector has to make adjustments to keep an eye on their bottom line, right? Have to find a way to stay afloat, to stay in business. The companies can't just take on losses and be footing the bill after that $2,000 cap. So the way that they are justifying adjustments for next year, we're probably going to see much higher premiums. That's the expectation for next year, for 2025. We're probably going to see double, triple, quadruple certain premiums on plans, if not more. I mean, there's some plans that have zero premium for prescription plans this year, or 40 cents or 50 cents or $15, pretty minimal, right? But that I have a feeling that that's not really going to exist next year. So that is going to be one of the big changes for people that aren't taking any prescriptions. They're going to be thinking, and that is a lot of people still that I run into, or maybe just a few generics. Now they're going to have to start paying a much higher premium for their prescription drug plans if they have a standalone prescription drug plan. And it will affect the Medicare Advantage plans as well, because that's a part of the benefit that's built in to Medicare Advantage, is the prescription drug portion. So we're definitely going to see that higher, most likely higher premium. And then we're also probably going to see slimmer formularies. So a formulary is a list of all the covered prescriptions that a plan will cover. And I'm sure insurance companies are going to pick and choose certain prescriptions to remove from their formulary for next year, which they can do. So we're going to see overall across the board, generally speaking, we're going to see higher premiums and smaller formularies. And the cost for these prescriptions is probably going to be now spread out more across the board for everybody. So pretty much everybody's premiums are going to be going up. Instead of just individuals who have expensive medications having to pay those out-of-pocket expenses, now that's going to kind of be distributed across the board for pretty much everybody. So that's, yes, there's positive for some people, negative for some people. There's trade-offs, right? Any sort of legislation, in my opinion, for the most part, it's a series of trade-offs. There's no silver bullet. There's no solution that's going to solve the problem for anybody. I mean, we've already gotten notice that there's at least one carrier that's going to exit the prescription drug plan space for next year completely. So we might even see that too. We might see other carriers decide, no, we're not, this is not, not favorable business climate for us. We're going to exit the market in this area. So there's going to be a lot of changes. We're expecting a lot of disruption for 2025. Our phone is probably going to be ringing off the hook more than ever. We're trying to build in some ways, some tools for our clients and for folks that are interested in shopping their plans, some tools to help them shop and make sure they're in the correct plan. So we're working on that. One other thing that people don't think about when they're on their, let's say you're on an employer group plan, and maybe your company subsidizes your premiums heavily, and so maybe you're only paying $50, $100 a month, maybe 150, 200, or maybe you're covering your spouse, maybe you're up to 300 a month. What you're not seeing is necessarily is the full price that your employer is paying for your premiums. So really the full price, actually, I just got off the phone with a woman. She said her full price for her plan through her employer is $1,200 a month. So that $1,200 builds in a good prescription coverage, probably pretty reasonable prescription co-pays. So it's kind of built in, but the employer is footing the bill. If you have an individual Medicare policy and a prescription drug plan or a Medicare Advantage, we're removing the employers from the equation, right? So no more employer subsidy. Now everything is your responsibility to pay. So far, the prescription plans on Medicare, yes, they've been lower. There's some out of pocket on the current prescription plans. So kind of where it's changing is the premiums are then going to go up to try and bring the out of pocket exposure down. So it's all give and take here. Really, it's not going to benefit folks that are taking few or no medications. Really, those are probably the people that are going to be hit the hardest. And of course, the people that are going to benefit the most are if you have a brand name medication with a retail price of $500, $1,000, $2,500, probably benefit from this legislation hitting the books next year.
Because those people won't have to pay any more than $2,000
if their prescription is covered by the plan.
Yeah, before it's covered. Okay.
Right.
So a lot of people that are just taking one or two or no prescriptions are going to feel the hit a lot more.
Exactly. They're going to be very upset. Why do I have to pay all this premium? I'm not taking anything. Why should I be penalized when, I've done a good job of making sure I don't need to take any medications, I'm watching my blood pressure, my cholesterol, and I don't have any, any sort of pre-existing conditions. Why should I have to pay so much just to get some prescription coverage? That's going to be the complaint that I'm expecting, right? And it makes sense, right? I don't really have a good answer for that. This is our government at work trying to do its best job to problem solve, and sometimes and a lot of times there's trade-off. So
it's just the age old, it's not fair. And it's like, you're right, it's not fair, but I don't know if there's anything we can do about it.
I know. Fair.
Yeah. It is frustrating. Let's say that Donald Trump gets elected and things are kind of taking more of a conservative swing. Do you think that will change anything, or do you think things will kind of stay on the trajectory that they're on?
I have no idea. My political savviness with understanding how these different systems work and this be vetoed now, I don't follow politics close enough to understand all the nuances there of what can be done. I'm sure he'll try and do something to get on his record. I just don't know how much can be changed this far into the game with that Inflation Reduction Act, because things are set to go. I mean, this is all set to take effect January 1st. I don't know if there's any way for that to not happen, at least for 2025. Maybe for future years, things can be done or adjustments can be made, but what they'll be and if they get passed and what will actually happen, your guess is as good as mine.
I saw that Trump was saying he wanted to overturn the Affordable Care Act, but it's like, he obviously probably wanted to do that when he was in office for 4 years, but it didn't happen.
Right. Yeah. A lot of things have to line up to, so
it takes time for, even if presidents are able to do these massive overhauls, it usually takes years for it all to go into effect. Speaking of changes that are coming down the pike, I keep reading about the star rating system, Medicare Advantage, and how that's about to change, but I don't understand that in the first place. I don't understand what the star rating thing is, and I don't understand why it's changing or what's changing about it. I can't make heads or tails of all the jargon that I'm reading in these articles, so can you help me?
Yeah, and in my understanding of the star rating system is used to measure different metrics, service metrics, how quick plans are turning around with redetermination requests, and what kind of allegations are being made against the company over the year. So there's all sorts of metrics that Medicare uses to come up with this star rating. It's out of 5 stars. The higher star rating companies get on the Medicare Advantage side, the more funding they get for their plan. So a difference in star rating, plans really are incentivized to perform well and have a good star rating, because the more stars they get means the more revenue coming in from the federal government for the Medicare Advantage plans, which are government subsidized plans. So when a company takes a star rating hit, even 1 star or half a star, that's millions and millions of dollars in revenue that the company's going to lose out on the next year. There was some sort of battle. They made some sort of change 3 or 4 insurance companies were not happy with, or they feel like Medicare wrongly adjusted the star rating. And so they actually took the federal government to court, and they actually won the lawsuit over that battle between the star rating. So if you're looking at Medicare plans, you want to try and keep it 3 stars or above. If your plan starts going into 2.5, 2 stars, I would guess probably a plan you want to avoid. So that's kind of how that star rating system works.
Okay. So they were just unhappy because somehow the way that Medicare rated them, their ratings dropped, and they didn't think it was a fair way that they were going about
like they were not given proper notice or something like that.
Okay. That makes sense. That helps me understand. So with all the changes coming with prescriptions, obviously we've all been hearing I don't know, all of us, but I feel like I have been hearing a lot about the weight loss drugs, Ozempic, Wegovy, those things. I was talking about them to my husband the other day, and he was like, I've never heard of that before. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I feel like everyone's thinking about this, but they're not. But there's just so much hubbub and all the stuff surrounding these weight loss drugs because they're so expensive.
Yeah.
And they're hard to get.
Yeah.
And also Medicare doesn't cover them for weight loss. They only cover them for type 2 diabetes and for the risk of heart attack or stroke.
Right.
It sounds like that's going to change. Do you think that's true, that they'll change it to cover it for weight loss?
These are high demand prescriptions. People are really wanting to find them and having a tough time finding them, and they are very expensive. And Medicare plans this year do not cover all of them, and they don't really cover weight loss medication in general. There's not much track record. I think that's the main issue with Medicare, is that it just hasn't been proven to be a cost-effective way to treat any sort of issues with being overweight, having a tough time losing some weight, and just with general health. So, I mean, I'm sure the more track record we can, you can see on this and how it's been working and side effects and things like that, I'm sure Medicare eventually is going to have to make a decision in some of these prescription plans. And I think if they've gotten FDA approval next year, I think what we might see is we could see a couple plans decide to cover it. It is very expensive. And with that cap coming in next year, I'm not sure if it makes sense, but some of the companies can find ways to cover it because it is a very high demand type of prescription medication for the weight loss. And it seems like it can be very effective.
I also saw that there was a study done. They did some research looking into how much did it cost to make Ozempic. And I think they discovered that it only costs $5 to manufacture it, and they're selling it for these astronomical prices. So I know there's some research being done into why are these companies charging so much?
Are they calculating in lawyers' fees? I mean, these companies are constantly at battle in the courts as well.
Gosh.
And yes, they're very profitable, right? Look over the pandemic at some of the companies that came out with some of the vaccines. One of the issues with the Medicare system is that Medicare's never been able to negotiate the prices of the prescriptions. Technically, Medicare as a whole is the largest buyer of these medications, right? They should have a little bit more weight to be able to negotiate prices a little bit better. There's changes, and really, unfortunately, the United States here, we are probably footing majority of the bills for the research and development for the prescriptions. You hear a lot of times, oh, you can get this up in Canada for a lot less. And, it seems like the way things are arranged, unfortunately, is United States pays a big portion for the cost of these medications to be developed. Our system's not perfect. Medicare on the hospital, the medical side, I mean, it's a pretty great system in my opinion, but the prescription side it's a battle, that's for sure.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the Medicare Navigators podcast. We have a weekly Medicare 101 webinar that we would love to have you join us on. Go to our website at www.martinmedicare.com to reserve your spot today. Please join us again next week as we continue this conversation. All information related to this episode is listed below in the show notes.